Hello, I'm Matt.
And I'm Keith, and in this one we'll be discussing our dream workshops. In this episode we'll be covering workbenches, machines and tools. And we'd love to hear some of your ideas about what the perfect workshop would be for you. So please do get in touch.
So you've had a bit of a journey recently with workbenches. You went from we always say MFT style. There must be a better word, because I imagine MFT is probably trademarked by Festool.
Possibly. I'm loving the solid top already. I don't think I'd ever go back, but I guess my original plan for that table was that it would just be kind of like an assembly table, MFT table. I never had plans of using it as my main workbench. And I see a lot of people with these lovely hand tool workbenches with like a 6-inch thick top and big chunky legs. There's loads of different styles, split top ones, ones with a tool well in them, big leg vices. I'd kind of love to have something like that, but I don't feel for me it's really necessary. Having worked on this large assembly table come workbench for a few years, it does everything I need it to do. Would you ever get or build one of these fancy hand tool style workbenches?
When I built my kind of pine workbench in the old workshop, it was very much in the style of those, but made out of pine. And well, it still probably cost £150 in materials, and that's quite a few years ago now. Was
it kind of studwork timber you used for that? I'm struggling to remember.
No, it was square edged, plain all round, which is it's nicer quality, and
higher grade,
you don't have the rounded corners.
Yeah.
But because it was pine, it got beaten up. And I think, again, it comes to what me and you do, as in we don't do one thing. If all you're doing is hand-cut dovetails, you can have a beautiful bench. Paul Sellers' benches are really quite simple, actually.
Yeah. He did a plywood one, didn't he?
Yeah, he did a plywood one.
Yeah.
I remember I was watching it the other day when I was restoring, say, my pillar drill. I've got it on my woodworking bench and I've got it covered in grease, and I'm hammering bearings out of something using the woodworking vise. I can't have nice things.
I'm the same.
But that's it, it's a workbench. I wanted to do everything on it, so I would never spend, I mean, you can literally spend thousands of pounds just on the timber to build and hardware to build a fine woodworking bench, and if you buy them off the shelf you can spend even more. I know one day, even if I had a rough bench and a good bench, I would just go, well, I'm just going to do this one bit on that bench.
Yeah.
And I would drill a hole. I was drilling holes in something yesterday, and I drilled a few holes into my floor. I'm like, I don't care. It's not gone all the way through, just a couple of marks. I don't care. It's a workshop. It's a bit of OSB. And I like not having to be precious.
Me too.
So you were saying with your new top, you don't have the insulation when you're using the track saw, you put some strips of wood. I've got the one sheet of ply on the top, and it's sacrificial.
Yeah.
And I love that I don't have to care. And I remember Laura Camp years ago, she had one that had 200 cut marks on it, spray paint all over it. She took it off, trimmed it off, and made a coffee table out of it, because it looks like a bit of modern art.
Yeah.
With all the paint, and I love that. I think when you make the first cut on your bench, you go, oh my God, that looks awful.
Yeah.
But when you've made the 50th cut, you're like, oh, I really like all these lines going in different directions. It's starting to get some character.
I completely agree. I kept my old workbench top from my old workshop. It's still in my shed, and I can't part with it, even though it's this scrappy bit of 24mm plywood, because it's sentimental to me. It's still got my old square dogs in them as well. Yeah, I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but I can't see myself getting rid of it at any point for some reason. Because you can see the history of all of the projects you worked on.
Yeah.
A dream workshop then. What does your dream workbench look like?
Like a lot of people, I loved the Jimmy DeResta basement thing, and people get, oh, I loved it when he was like that, even though he hated it.
Yeah.
I thought it was a really nice setup. And then he had the table saw at one end, so it's also the outfeed table. But maybe if at the other end you could have a little workbench that was solid, I think that'd be really good.
Nice, yeah.
And then just be able to walk around the whole thing with things along the walls, as in mitre saws and sanders along the walls, and be able to walk around it. I'm not sure it'd be great as a YouTube studio, but I think as a space to actually work, I think that'd be great.
I remember John Heiss mentioning in a few of his videos that he minimises the amount of horizontal surfaces around him because it's places to put things, and he wants to get into the discipline of putting things away all of the time. And that's one approach, but the other approach is obviously making more horizontal surfaces to put things. And that's kind of the approach that I take, I think. A lot of people have commented in the past saying my workshop always looks incredibly clean, but it really isn't. When I'm mid-project, I have a big clear down after every project, or after every couple of projects sometimes, just to put everything back in its place. But when I'm working on something, my workshop is an absolute bomb site. There's tools everywhere. Every single horizontal surface is just full of rubbish.
Yeah, I think I'm probably the same, but when I start a project, I've got an empty bench and everything's away. It's just throughout the project, things get everywhere. I definitely know it's a flaw of mine is I get caught up in the project. I could be tidying up as I went, but I don't. I just want to get on to the next stage.
Me too, yeah.
And it's more of a problem with filming as I start with, I'm going to do this camera angle and this camera angle and this camera angle. And then halfway through the project, I realise, I'm just not moving the camera anymore because I'm so caught up in the actual build.
I do that as well. You start with great intentions, don't you? And usually the start of my videos will have the more cinematic camera shots. And then towards the end, it's just plonk the camera over there. That'll do.
That too. Do you have a dream workbench?
I really like work holding capabilities. The pop-up bench dogs that I just built work fantastically well. I'm really, really happy with those. I just feel like there is a whole world of other work holding capabilities that I've seen in other people's workbenches, leg vices, things like that I've never really took the time to understand how to implement them to a workbench because it just doesn't interest me that much. I want to be making projects. When it comes to things like workshop jigs and work holding things, I just lose patience because it's not what I'm passionate about making, if you know what I mean. I know there's a lot of woodworking channels on YouTube that are focused on workshop style projects, and I know that they do incredibly well, but yeah, it's just not where my passion is, if you know what I mean.
No, you're right. If both of us just did a channel kind of talking about the latest Banggood thing, which we've been sent by for free, we'd probably be rich. It's crazy that
those videos do well. Yeah,
they do so well. But yeah, no, your bench dogs are great. They look like the fidget spinner of the woodworking world. I don't think I had to get any work done. I just sit there pressing the button all day long. I've got some really nice holdfasts that are blacksmith made. They kind of need a thick top to actually work because they need to kind of rack in the hole.
Yeah.
But then I got the kind of ratcheting track clamp things. You know, we see Peter Millard using constantly. And now I just use them. They're just so good with the holes. Yeah. But of course, you don't have holes in your bench anymore. But
no. So I was sent a holdfast by Pony Jorgensen a while back, and I was really keen to use holdfasts because I think they look great, and I would love to use them. But this particular one had I don't know whether it was hexagonal or octagonal profile, and every time I used it on one of my holes on my MDF MFT top, it just massacred the top. If I was using them for any length of time, the top would have been absolutely destroyed.
I don't think it does with particularly any of that, because they need to go in the hole and then kind of twist in the hole.
Yeah.
To hold.
Pivot a little bit kind of thing.
So they're always going to kind of damage. So I think the ones I got said they needed a minimum, 60mm top to work.
Okay.
But in my pine top, didn't damage it at all. Because I guess they were pushing probably on the fibres more down the bottom of the hole rather than the top. But if you've got such a thin top, then it's going to damage it. But yeah, they're really satisfying to use because you're just hitting something with a mallet. And you can put a bit of scrap wood in between the holdfast and your workpiece so you don't damage it. But the ratchet clamps are quicker, but they don't work in a thick bench because you can't get through the hole. So But then there's so many clever ones that they only fit, say, 30 mil into the hole, and then they're a bit more like the clamp you have on a miter saw, the thing you screw down.
Yeah.
You can get those that look good for the bench.
All right.
Yeah, there's so many good options.
But again, out of laziness, more often than not, if I want something to be held down rigidly to my workbench, I'll just get a clamp out and clamp it down to the work surface. As long as you've got a lip around your worktop to clamp something down to, that works.
My most used thing is the vise. Again,
yeah, me too.
I use my vise constantly. It's my most used work holding option.
Mm.
I think I saw one of your shorts on Facebook or something about putting a metalworking vise in a woodworking vise, and it is a great thing. But I would love to have a space where a proper engineer's vise is always set up. Just
that would be nice, yeah.
Because sometimes I clamp bits of metal in my woodworking vise because at the moment I have to walk back to the house to get the other vise, and I just can't be bothered to do it.
The jaws get ruined.
Yeah, I know they're sacrificial jaws, but I would love just to have the metal one there for whenever I wanted to use it. And maybe I will in the next workshop.
My one regret with my current vise is that it doesn't have the quick release thing, so you're just constantly spinning it.
Yeah, but I paid about £60 for mine without the quick release. And this is a rusty one off eBay. Back when I went to the car boot sales, I think I picked up the nice quick release one for like 20 quid. And I sold that because it was attached to my bench. So someone paid for the bench is probably what the vise was worth alone. But in fact, I see these pattern making vices that twist and do all these fancy stuff. But I looked one up. I saw someone doing it the other day, and it can pivot and go at a complete 90 degrees to that. And like, that looks fancy. I want one of those. And like, it's £600. No. I don't think even if I was going to do my dream workshop, I just don't think I could live with myself spending £600 on a vise. I think I'd be a terrible millionaire because I think I'd have guilt about buying anything.
I would be the same. Once you're in a frugal mindset, it's difficult to deviate from that.
Yeah, I don't think that's a bad thing whatsoever.
No, that's true.
So, dream tools. I don't know. I think I'm pretty happy with everything I've got. The Bosch contractor saw battery one was kind of this is going to be a good temporary fix for this year for going in and out of the house. I'm really happy with it. And there was times in my life where I was on Facebook and eBay every single day, and every single day I would type in table saw and look for things to restore. I don't know, I think I seem to have got past it. Maybe the better I get at it, you realise that the tools are less important.
Yeah.
I think when you're starting out, you can go, I'm struggling to make this thing. It must be the tools.
Yeah.
And that's partly true sometimes. I suppose the one kind of luxury thing I have is the nice big bandsaw now. That is an expensive item. I think it's about £1,200.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's certainly more expensive bandsaws. But the kind of, you've got the Milwaukee, I've got the Bosch, you've had Hikoki and Makita. They're all at a similar level and they're all excellent, aren't they?
Absolutely. They do everything I want them to do. They're reliable. And they're nice to use. I know a lot of people, when it comes to dream workshops, would be probably thinking along the lines of getting everything Festool. The experiences I've had with Festool haven't really enamoured me to them. So, for example, the Festool Domino I own, I use, I think it's great. When I got it, though, I was a little bit disappointed at how it felt. It just didn't feel as premium as I expected it to feel. A few months later, I did the kitchen worktops project with a friend of mine who's a kitchen fitter. He brought his Festool TS55 round. It bogged down in all of the cuts, and we ended up using my Makita. So I didn't have a great experience with that either. And also, I expected it to feel like this amazing premium solid chunk of German engineered. Just didn't get a great vibe from it. And then I've used the Capex before at a friend's place. It's really loud.
Really?
Yeah, I think so anyway. I mean, I think the first time I tried it was actually at Peter Millard's workshop, and I just asked to fire it up because I wanted to hear what the motor sounded like. And it's like, man, that's loud compared to my miter saw. I guess the one Festool tool that still intrigues me slightly is Well, there's two sanders. There's the Rotex and the ETS 150, I think it is. I've heard great things about them. I've seen the reviews, and they do intrigue me because I do like a premium sander, as you know. I like to spoil myself in that area because I hate sanding so much that it makes sense for me just to make it as pleasurable as an experience as I possibly can. So I'd like to try those. I haven't tried them yet. Seeing Ben from Hugh and Orr use his Wadkin table saw, there must be something so satisfying about using a saw like that.
Yeah, and I actually think they're kind of beautiful saws to look at. I love old machinery. Used to just be like, if it had the logo, it was like embossed metal and lettering was great. They're just nice looking things. But the dust collection, the motor on the side just sticks out. There's a big hole in the side of the cabinet.
Yeah.
And people do all these solutions of building metal boxes or wooden boxes, and they never look very good. I like my old pillar drill because the technology really hasn't moved on much. But the old bandsaw I had was very powerful, but because of the nature of it all being cast iron and curved, it was massive. The one I've got now is probably half the size, but the cut capacity is very similar. The dust collection's much better. It's quieter. It's easy to move.
Yeah, that's the thing. They lack some of the modern features, don't they? But on the other hand, it just must be so satisfying using something that really was truly built to last. And everything's replaceable as well. You can still get parts for it. I know the parts are extremely expensive from what I've heard, but having something that you know could last 300 years is just impressive, isn't it? And
that was my dream at one point, to have a workshop just full of old machines. I had the bandsaw, I had a table saw, I had the drill, I had a planer. Dust extractors didn't exist.
Yeah.
So I needed a thicknesser. But then the dust extraction's so bad on them all that in a small space, I think when I look at like Jimmy Dresser in his big warehouse, it doesn't matter so much. I couldn't move with them. They're so heavy. So I've kind of given up on that dream at the moment. But maybe I'll do it again. Mitre saws didn't exist. You could get a radial arm saw, but I really, really do not want one.
I don't really know much about radial arm saws. I mean, obviously I've seen a lot of them being used. Frank Howarth has got a couple, hasn't he, I think?
Yeah.
And they look great. They do look really nice aesthetically, but is it the safety aspect that puts you off?
I think if you know how to use them, I don't think they're unsafe. They take up so much room.
Yeah.
They don't look big in Frank's swimming pool, but even in your workshop, I think they take up a ridiculous amount of room.
Yeah.
Like they might be sticking out the wall 1.5 meters.
Yeah.
I say, I just love the idea now that if I want to build something big, I put the casters down on my bench, push it to the corner, move my table saw into the corner. Even when I had the Axminster cast iron one that's significantly smaller than yours, with the extension wings and stuff, it was a pain to move.
Yeah.
And because you've tuned everything up, the fence and things, and it's only bolted on, you don't want to move it because things get knocked out of square quite easily as soon as you start moving it, as these contractor saws are designed to move around. I don't know, I think moving really reset all my things when I thought, you know what, I could work in my living room and just use hand tools.
Yeah.
It really changed how I thought about everything. I don't need all this stuff, especially now I'm not selling things. It was much more important when I was selling things to have efficient machines. I'm trying to be minimalist.
Yeah. I like that approach, and I think it really makes for interesting videos as well.
I don't know, I'm very unrelatable now.
We've got to remember this is Dream Workshop, so for me it's like, so I'm going to have that old vintage Wadkin table saw, but I want it to be expertly modified and developed with some of the more modern features by someone who knows what they're doing. I'll have that, please. and also 2 bandsaws. I want a bandsaw dedicated to resawing, and I want a bandsaw dedicated for curve cuts.
Now, I would be tempted to do that again, and I think David Pseuto does it well. He's got a bandsaw probably about the same size as mine, maybe a bit bigger for resawing, and then he's got a tiny one. You could pretty much, putting a thin blade in a table saw, it's the resawing that's the test of a bandsaw, isn't it?
Yeah.
Cutting curves in some 18mm ply is not a challenge, so you could pretty much get away with
Just a cheap benchtop style one.
A cheap benchtop style one, which you can get for £100. So if it's Dream Workshop, I'd probably get either one of the Axminster or the Record Power. They now have a BS250 Sabre, which is like, looks really lovely. I think it's about £350, £400. Quite a lot of money, but just a lovely little machine, and just always have that blade on. Yeah, it's the luxury of whatever you need to do, you can just walk up to a machine and just do it. It's already set up. Is great. As I bet so many times you want to do a resawing cut or a curve cut and you've got the wrong blade in the bandsaw, but you just try and do it anyway rather than face the pain of changing a blade. I'm
ashamed to say I never change the blade. So even when I'm resawing, I tend to do that with my 6mm 3 TPO blade, or I'll just try and resaw it on the table saw and rotate the workpiece.
Yeah.
And then just hog out the middle on the bandsaw kind of thing. If things take too long to change, then I just don't do them.
You see production shops, they do that. They'll have, Peter has routers that always have the same bit in. So it's not where's the bit and changing it. You just pick up the different router. It's really efficient.
Yeah, where's my roundover router? Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
And it makes sense. You can do that with bandsaws or sanders.
Yeah.
I was very tempted when I had the red Makita sander, because it wears the pads out, ripping them more off. I think the Velcro starts to go on the sander and the disc. I was like, if I kept like an 80 and a 120 on two different sanders, that'd probably do most of my sanding needs.
You know about the pad savers, I presume?
Yes.
I knew you would, but I just thought I'd double check.
Yeah, I think I even did a video about them, because it used to be you could only get the Merkur ones, which costs like a tenner or something ridiculous.
Yeah.
As now you can get Chinese ones that are so cheap. Hello, Matt here. It takes us quite a lot of time to prepare and produce each episode of this podcast, and we'd like to keep putting it out for free. If you enjoy the podcast and you'd like to help, support and shape future episodes, you can find a link to our Patreon page in the show notes, or just search online for Workshop Banter Patreon. Thank you, and now back to the podcast.
But we haven't really talked hand tools so far. And again, I suppose the dream workshop would be all of these, I don't know, the big names, Lee Nielsen and Veritas, hand planes and chisels. But again, I feel like a Stanley or a Record vintage hand plane does everything I need it to do. I suppose part of me wants to kind of upgrade to a thicker blade at some point and see what difference that makes, because a lot of people rave about, putting on a thicker blade into one of those hand planes makes the world of difference. So I might try that at some point in the future, but I don't like the idea of having all of these expensive premium tools. And like you said earlier, I'm not allowed nice things. I mean, particularly when it comes to clothing, I'll buy any item of clothing, think, I just need to do something in the workshop quickly. I don't need to get changed. I'll just do it quickly, and then I ruin it. And then it's like, so I only buy cheap clothes now.
We are exactly the same on that. I've got one nice pair of jeans, a pair of Levi's, which I think I only paid £30 for something, and these are I do not wear in the workshop. And I bought myself a pair of shoes because I've got 2 weddings this year. But I went to visit my dad 2 weeks ago. As soon as I get there, he's like, the guttering's leaking on the shed, and I had to climb up onto a felted roof, and felt is so abrasive.
Yeah.
It scratched my shoes to pieces, wore the knees through my jeans. I've probably got 8 pairs of jeans that were all good, but they were all scruffy, and I only need 2. But
yeah,
I keep ruining the good ones, and then they go on the scruffy pile. I tell you what, I used to buy the Screwfix or Toolstation £30 dealer boots.
Yeah.
And they'd wear out in a year. Then I bought myself, I think they cost £120 for the Blundstone ones.
Yeah.
I think I'm 6 years in on those.
Really?
Yeah.
What is that brand? Blundstone?
Yeah, they're Australian, but I've got the steel toe cap ones. And okay, you can still see the steel now. I've worn the leather away, and there's a hole in the sole, but I reckon they've got a couple more years in them.
Yeah.
It's such a false economy buying the cheap ones, because these are so comfy and light. I put on a pair of cheap, I think, Dickies ones, which actually they weren't even that cheap. Yeah. And they feel like lifting lead weights every time you pick your foot up compared to these.
They're the pull-on ones as well, and they've got a tab at the front and the back, so you don't have to mess around with laces.
Yeah, I've got to the age where I can't be dealing with laces.
Yeah, me too. I've got elastic laces. Have you discovered elastic laces yet? Silicon laces, rather. So they're
No.
individual silicon strips that you put inside your trainers, so that you can literally just stretch your shoe and put them on. And every single pair of trainers I have has got silicon laces in now. It's brilliant.
I bet the missus loves going out with you with your silicon laces and your cheap jeans covered in paint.
But I've got a pair of Timberland boots that I got from ITS, and I've been surprised at how quickly they've worn, because I think I've only worn them 3 or 4 times. I used them for the patio build, basically anywhere where I might drop something heavy on my feet. Maybe a handful of times, and they're already all scuffed up and nasty looking. I'm not been impressed with those.
I had a pair of Timberland pull-on kind of dealer boots, and not safety ones, just everyday boots. The soles went in a year.
Really?
And I think Cat are supposed to be better.
Yeah.
I was talking to someone in an independent, it was like a outdoorsy shop, and he was saying that he wears the Cat ones, and they're really good. Yeah, it's sometimes you're paying for a brand, and it's not necessarily any good.
Yeah.
You think of Timberland are going to be rugged, but no, not in my experience, and clearly not in your experience.
What about you with hand tools then? Would you go for the nicer premium ones?
I think I'm with you that I would almost be scared to use them. So what I've got is an Axminster Rider low-angled jack plane. And on their eBay outlet store, I think I paid 80 quid for it.
All right.
And I bought a spare blade for it, which is really handy because it's so quick on these, because they don't have chip breakers.
Oh,
So
yeah.
swapping the blade out is so quick. And I love it. And I bought the block plane, I think, again, when they had it on sale for like 50 quid. So I think the Rider series is really nice compromise between quality and price.
Okay.
They do one that's even smaller, and that looks like it fits in your hand. I'd like that.
Yeah.
I'd like I think a smoothing plane. So a number 4, and then a 6 or a 7. And then I think
I'd love a 7.
I bought a Faithful 7, and it was like 35 quid. And I flattened it, but it took me, I must have spent 4 hours.
Yeah.
So if you take into time the consumables and your time, it is not worth it. But I got it to flatten my workbench when I built it. I think if I had a 7, the low angle 5, a smoother and a block, I think those 4 would...
Yeah.
I had like 8 planes when I moved. Like, well, why? I don't use them. You don't need that many. You just you see them and go, I'm going to buy that. It's a bargain.
It's Dream Workshop though. You can have one of each if you want.
No, because I don't want things that aren't necessary.
Yeah,
I
me
did
too.
that before.
Yeah. But as it's a Dream Workshop, I'm going to have a number 7 as well.
Yeah. No, I'm having a number 7. I'm also going to have the small block. You know what I'd love? A router plane, and I would use that all the time.
Yeah.
I've got a little tiny one, and I'm a big fan of the brass keyhole plates for hanging pictures.
Yeah.
And I only just discovered kind of that the router plane is the perfect thing for cutting that little mortise out.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But it's too small, the one I've got for hinges. So I think, just getting a hinge to fit perfectly. Yes, I'd love a router plane.
I've always fancied a rebate plane as well. I've never owned one though.
Yeah, I've got a wooden one. The wooden ones, they work fine. It just takes so long to set up, I find.
Yeah, I would never get a wooden plane of any variety. I just, like you say, it's just faff, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't want to
Unnecessary faff.
fight at all.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Chisels, I don't almost understand how people get their chisels perfectly flat on the back. I mean, how precise are you going?
Yeah.
I've got some Stanley ones and some Irwin ones and some Marples ones. All of them from car boot sales, and I think they're all great. They hold their edge long enough. They're pretty easy to flatten the back. I don't think I'd replace them.
It's partly a YouTube culture thing, isn't it, of everyone kind of polishing everything until it's a mirror finish and you can brush your teeth in the back of your chisel kind of thing. And it's all a bit unnecessary.
Japanese pull saws. I bought some Western ones, wooden handled, nice ones. Spear and Jackson ones.
Yeah.
Just because I like the look, and I'm like, I'm in England. Why don't I use Spear and Jackson? I'm sure were a British company. I don't know where they're made anymore.
So they cut on the push, I presume.
Cut on the push, yeah. I picked up one of my Japanese ones, like, I just prefer them.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
I like Western hand planes, Japanese saws. I've never used a Japanese chisel, but they look very similar, really. They're not radically different like the planes and saws are. So I've got a couple of Japanese saws. I would get a few more. And they're not expensive.
No, like 20 quid, aren't they, roughly?
A bit more.
Yeah, I'm probably going back a few years, actually.
I bought a 20 quid one and all the teeth popped off.
Did they?
Almost on the first use. I had an Irwin one that I had for years and it lost a few teeth, but that was pretty cheap. But I had it for 6 years or something. And actually it was still usable. This really cheap one didn't last long at all. I like the German stuff, like the Wöhrer.
Yeah.
However you say it. Like I've got the multicoloured Allen key things, which look like a gimmick, but it's like, oh, I need the yellow one. And it makes it so quick to get.
Yeah.
And socket sets and, I don't know, things like that just, when they fit better around a bolt, just work. They do. I think they do work better.
Yeah. I think I would treat myself to a nice set of wooden handled chisels as well. Some more premium ones, because the ones I'm using do the job absolutely fine, but seeing as this is Dream Workshop, I'm going to have some fancy ones.
I think you're allowed that. Okay, then I would buy a fancy sharpening system as well.
Yeah? Oh, like a whetstone type thing, or...
Like a Tormac.
Yeah, or what are the abrasive, diamond abrasive wheel? CBN wheels?
Yeah. I've never tried one of those.
No, I'd quite fancy one of those one day.
I'm thinking more of the belt ones, the abrasive belts.
Yeah.
So Axminster do one and Robert Sorby do one. And I like the idea, because setting the angle just seems so much easier when you've got something that's flat rather than round.
Yeah.
Also, you can have dust collection, but also because I have done other things with like restoring machines, sometimes you just need to, I don't know, grind the end off a bolt, and having the abrasive belts would be useful.
Yeah.
Oh, I've forgotten a big one that I'd like. A lathe.
Ah, of course, yeah.
And what reminded me was the belt grinder, because keeping your turning chisels sharp is pretty essential, isn't it? So a quick way of doing that.
Yeah.
And like the Robert Sorby one was developed for turning. So yeah, I'd like a lathe. I don't even know what I want it for. It just looks so much fun. It's a
is
toy.
Great fun. I really got into it when I first got my lathe, but I just haven't used it enough. You know, everyone says the same. They get a lathe and then it sits there and it doesn't get used very much. I'd love to use it more, but lathe projects on YouTube don't do particularly well. So if I do use it, I doubt I'll film it. It'll just be for fun kind of thing. I think with the lathe, I got far more excited about learning the skills and tools and everything that you need to turn. That was the main appeal for me. Actual turned projects don't really interest me that much. So it's almost like I got it to learn, and then it's like, well, that's great. I've kind of learned now. I'm not highly proficient at using a lathe. I would never be brave enough to use a what are they called? The chisels with an angle.
Skew
chisel. Yeah. There's a real art to that, and every time I've even attempted it, I've had a catch, and it's just put me off. It's definitely great fun, and also it's highly satisfying because you can just make things very, very quickly. So if you want to make a mallet, you can turn one in half an hour and it's done. I don't know about you, but I haven't got any recommendations this week.
I do. Well, it makes up for all the times you've had two, so that's fine.
I'll make up for it and have 5 next time.
I believe you. So mine is Ruth Amos, Amos. She has the Kids Make Things channel, or Kids Invent Things.
Yeah.
But this is her own channel, and it's called Making a DIY Saw Stop.
Really?
Her solution seems really good. I forgot what it is, but it stops the blade perfectly.
No way. That sounds cool. I'll check that out.
It is cool, and it's interesting. I don't like saw stops. Dream Workshop, again, I would get a saw stop.
Yeah.
I think it's good technology, but I don't like their business practice, how they've kind of trying to force everyone to use it, but without allowing other people to develop their own. I think Bosch developed one that used different technology.
Yeah, Reax, wasn't it, or something it was called?
Right.
Yeah.
But they were not allowed to release it. So it's they talk about safety, but it's not all about safety. It's all about money. Otherwise, yeah.
Why else would you license it to Festool as well?
Yeah. So, yes, it's a really good video. Thank you for listening. You can find Keith on YouTube by searching for Rag N Bone Brown and me by searching for Badger Workshop. We have a Patreon page if you'd like to help support us in making future episodes of the podcast. Link to that in the show notes. And we have a Workshop Banter Instagram and Facebook page if you'd like to get in touch, which is @workshopbanter, all one word.